everyone. My name is Adam Williams, and you are listening or perhaps even watching to another episode of Retail Redeveloped. You may have noticed that the background scenery has changed for this episode. It's because I'm coming to you from my still under construction home office. So forgive the cluttered background. But I'm really excited today to be joined by Michael Keplinger. He is a consumer products guru, design master. He owns a company called SmashBrand. He's here today to talk to us about how people can stay relevant in an insanely challenging and tumultuous time in retail. And I'd like to, Michael, if you don't mind, take a second and just tell people a little bit about who you are, what SmashBrand is all about. I mean, you guys have worked with huge companies, PayPal, Duracell, 7-Eleven, Kraft, Heinz, you name it. So you've been around the block in the retail and consumer packaged goods segment. So do me a favor, just tell people who you are, a little bit about SmashBrands, and if you don't mind, take a minute and just touch on kind of the why behind your business and how you guys got started.
Yeah, sure. So I run the strategy side of our business at SmashBrand. I'm a partner of SmashBrand. We're one of the probably the only packaging design agency that integrates testing and a lot of data into our process. And just kind of a little backstory of where we got here too, because you touched on, immersed in it. And really, we started 20 years ago launching our own consumer brands in the health goods space. And so we come from a lot of experience, maybe some of your listeners and things of having kind of walked through those shoes, having to launch our own brands. And fast forward, a decade later after that, really is that passion of creating the brands that really led to starting SmashBrand. And it is the core of our business. And a lot of what we learned in that place is what is the philosophy behind how we run SmashBrand, how we think about building brands, and even have a few of our own brands that we still own and maintain today.
Do me a favor, unpack, because a lot of people on this listening to this show aren't CPG experts, right? So walk people through exactly what you guys do, and walk us through maybe a typical perfect client for you guys, and just really, if you don't mind, boil it down to what you do in layman's terms, so people can have a little bit more context.
For sure. So we are exclusively working for consumer packaged goods products. These are things that are on the shelf in retail. And we're a strategic branding agency. So when we're doing the thought work and the strategy behind how you put that best foot forward, building that brand, the story and everything, and then specifically with products, your unique differentiators, how you bring those forward to tell the story that packaging needs to tell in today's day and age by itself. We kind of draw the line there. Once you have a product, it's ready to go to the shelf. That's activation, and really we do that with our own brands, but that's not SmashBrand's specialty. So we're focused heavily on that initial brand strategy. And so to your question too about that process and what that might look like for someone coming to us, whether let's say your brand new product are coming on a Kickstarter, or like a lot of existing brands that are realizing that they need to refresh and kind of reposition their products. We kind of just come in and really we're starting with the consumer and looking at the entire marketplace and essentially trying to find opportunity, white space. Is it the same thing that you can say differently that just really resonates with people, or some under communicated value propositions, and again, finally with a brand new product, really how do you bring what makes uniquely your product different forward in a way that is not only messaged that way, but also resonates with your audience, with the target audience. And so that is the strategy side of the work. And ultimately that upfront work is critically important. And driving that strategy, the audience, and whether it's messaging, is going before our design team has even touched a thing, and is really this very informed design brief. And so we're going to move into kind of design, and this is where through that process too, where SmashBrand I think is quite unique, is depending on the client and their needs and really budgets and things like this at a concept stage. We can put in front of consumers and really get a sense of which concept here is going to do the best job, selling that strategy, conveying that strategy, and then committing to that strategy, and then refining from there and taking those learning points into another round of design of proposed final packaging for the front of the packaging, and then taking that into more of bringing your competitors in there who you expect to see on the shelf and testing the performance of that, simulating that buying experience. And this is just a tremendous amount of insight that is actionable, and so much that moves forward into that will translate into market performance. And that's really our process from nuts and bolts and all the way through to delivery of essentially art files, and they're ready to finalize their product and go to market.
So walk me through an example of how you've helped a brand find that white space. I think that's a really good analogy. Another analogy I've heard is like find the blue water where there's not a bunch of churned up water and there's a million different people that are all fighting for the same real estate. Walk me through an example of how you've helped a brand, just to help us again kind of continue to contextualize what you guys do and a little bit more about your secret sauce.
Yeah, so I'm going to walk through without names because they haven't launched their product yet, but this big project we've been working on for the last several months, and they produce food oils like olive oil, canola oil, and like most of us know, there's so many brands. Most of us think about them as it's all kind of the same. Maybe there's a little bit slightly different quality. So when you're a brand new brand coming out like this, and how do you make an impact? How do you even get a consumer to care about yet another brand? And so the strategy on this particular project was really diving into the drivers of deep audit of the marketplace. We saw a lot about how so much of oils that used to be dominated by the Mediterranean, and then someone got really smart, California Olive Ranch, and really basically made California the new Mediterranean for high quality olives. And so all these brands are jumping on that. So you had a lot of this drivers was geography. And so we had some theories. And so we come up with a strategy like, well, where is there outside of it? And there's a few brands that are doing a good job of maybe like changing the thinking pattern from where the oil comes from to some other things like functionally, how can this type of oil be better than this type of oil? So this is what we see in an audit and digging in there, and then going and actually testing and doing a consumer study with consumers and seeing what they cared about. In this particular project, we weighed, how much do people understand what smoke point matters? How much do they understand why would I buy sunflower oil over canola oil? These are things that I think a lot of brands, they go to market and they just take it for granted that the consumer knows what they're looking for when they show up. But by digging in deep and seeing that actually people buy sunflower oil because it's the lowest in cholesterol, but yet no one on their packaging is really talking about this huge advantage. And so I'm just kind of using an example to walk through where we're finding these white space. And so taking that also, these are some of the maybe some differentiators that are just standing right in front of us in plain sight that we can take advantage of because of the trends of consumers, but also the brand and what it really stands for. And some of the specifics were tying who they are and what they are. And we had this idea of a conceptual geography. So geography was very fixed to, the Mediterranean or California. But in this case, they were sourcing really high quality olives from different farms around the world, and several consumer trends about transparency and these things. And so the branding was actually a conceptual idea of a place, and it was the farm to market, the old way that products were brought to market. And that is the conceptual branding that we did. And then finally, really putting that as a positioning in front of consumers and seeing that it resonated, making sure that, if I'm a consumer that really values where the product comes from, which is a lot of what the brands are doing with geography, is this also going to resonate? And having very quantifiable numbers to get behind that really adds a lot of confidence.
So walk me through kind of a common thread that you see, and you touched on it on that story. I appreciate it, but a common thread of what brands that get it. I know, some brands might sell beef jerky, some brands might sell sports drinks, but can you pick when you see a brand that gets it and packaging that really speaks to you or the branding that really speaks to you, can you pick out one or two common threads that these guys all share?
Yeah, it's from my old engineering days, there's a problem and you're solving it. It's always like root cause analysis, and you have to keep taking it until there's not another why question on top and digging deeper. And when you take that kind of way of thinking about it and apply it to consumer products and specifically consumer behavior, it's all psychology, right? We're all people. We all get this. And even the reasons we buy a product and we might tell them to our friends and our neighbors, the deep reason behind that is usually not what you say. It's more psychological, and it's a deep-rooted connection more to psychology of who you are. And so the brands that get it, and to your point of your question, is they take it all the way back to, what is the emotional or psychological driver of why I'm buying this product, and what need does it solve? And if you can. And a lot of times you're not going to really message that on your package because it's a lot deeper subconscious connection. But the brands that get it can connect on the brand level to those drivers that are really that really matter to consumers, because these are the brands you got these market terms and slogans coming around, not slogans, but like tribe marketing, and that tribe. It's that tribe that they align with these people because they share that deeper psychology and their view of the world. So that I think is really hard to do. It's touchy-feely kind of stuff, and it's super valuable work if you have the ability to really get in there and drive down to what is driving the consumer, and you lead with that, and the brand is built around that. The other things matter too, depending on the type of product, but those things just come so much easier because they're buying a reflection of themselves in the brand.
Yeah, I heard a good example of that. And I'd love for you to, it doesn't have to be your own client, but I'd love for you to give me an example of a brand. But one that springs to mind, a guy told me the other day about a CEO friend of his that, makes gobs of money, could wear certainly a Rolex or a Patek Philippe or whatever kind of watch that he wants, but he always wears an Iron Man digital watch because he's really into fitness and he's really into running these Ironmans, and he likes wearing that as kind of representation of who he is. Or it could be the guy that makes a ton of money but would rather drive a pickup truck or a Jeep Wrangler or something like that, because that kind of shows what he's about. I'd love for you to give an example, a more kind of insightful example, if you can think of one, of somebody that does it well like that, or another brand representation.
Well, I'll stick with a product category you just started with just cars, because I think it's really easy for people to relate to that. But we all see this huge trend for hybrid electric vehicles, and it was really Toyota Prius that had the huge push there. And I actually grew up in San Diego. I live in Idaho now, but we moved here about 10 years ago, and the Prius came out. What has it been, like 15, 20 years? Wow. And you got really, really rich people buying this car. They're not very expensive. And personally, and I know I'm not the only one that thought of those, even to this day, I actually think a Prius is a very ugly car.
Oh, they're heinous.
So
Nobody's going to argue with you there. Nobody says like, hey, dude, cool Prius. Looks sweet.
And that is, and the driver is that because the people weren't buying, gas savings and this.
It's virtue signaling.
Yes, it is a signal that I care about the planet. I don't believe in waste, even though I could. I have the means, and it is very, very much. It's probably today we've got Tesla that's probably beating them out, but Tesla and Prius is really, I know it's Toyota, but it's a brand by itself. Oh yeah, and those are probably some of the biggest lifestyle brands in the automotive space, and it just gets at. Prius isn't leading when you land on their homepage, and back then especially, it's about saving the planet and all these kinds of things, and much less about I get 62 miles per gallon, because there were a lot of other vehicles that right. didn't do well, Chevy Volt, that had similar type of technological aspects.
Jet of diesel will get you 60 miles a gallon. But
totally, right?
Tree huggers behind us.
Exactly. So those are definitely some solid brands that do it well. The trick too is clothing and sunglasses, these kinds of things that we wear. And so they go everywhere with us, and they're in, Copper Mountain, the what's on your shirt, what it says.
It's not a beautiful shirt. I get it, but I like it.
But it's a statement of who you are. And so, some product categories are going to lend themselves a lot better to that because it's visible in society. It's visible to our friends. A car, right, is a statement of who I am. But the really interesting brands are ones that can pull it off when you wouldn't expect it to be. Like RX Bar, people love that brand. They love how they just kind of turn the whole bar, the simplicity of it, and they got really good tribe cult following behind
like Cliff
them.
Bar. Cliff Bar is a great example.
Totally. And exactly. And, these are products that people buy and they're not, they don't wear it they just pull it out of their pack, eat it. And not only that, but they tear it open and throw the wrapper in the trash in 2 seconds. So they've done a very good job of really rising above what the product is and the functionality of it and creating something that's meaningful to their customers.
So let's go the other way. How about somebody or group? Maybe it's even a market sector that doesn't get that. Like who's lagging behind? Who is? Give me some examples, or if there are, again, people come to you to try to figure this stuff out. So is there a common thread for people that don't get it, that aren't doing a good job of it? Is there one thing? Is there that like low hanging fruit that you're like, guys, let's start here, get this right. And getting back to the root cause, like let's get this one thing right before we can stepping stone up to you having an incredibly attractive brand.
Yeah, I would say I'm going to relate it to what I think is probably one of the most challenging product categories right now, and it's consumer electronics. And we all know of some really strong brands. You've got Sony and Panasonic, Sonos, exactly. And but if you're and the reason I bring that up is because, and this is, this kind of gets at the heart of, there's not just one answer, it's a strategy. And you have to look at the entire marketplace and what's going on in the trends. And the trends that I'm really kind of hinging on here is that Amazon has really changed the playing field for so many retail brands. And the Chinese companies that have been historically making these products, and they see their exact product that they made go into all these other brands, and the smart brands like Panasonic's and Sony's, if they're not making it themselves, they're going to, have really strong contracts and things, and they own it. But what I'm getting at is that it's so easy for these Chinese brands to just throw a brand out there. It's identical. You can go look at on Amazon and pick any product, consumer product category, consumer electronics, and there's 10 that they look identical. It's probably because they came from the same factory, and so. And I'm using consumer electronics because it's in front of our face. We can all relate to it. But this is happening in other product categories too. And so the only thing that becomes defensible at that point is that brand and a deeper meaning to the consumer electronics, where people are becoming conditioned to that the brand matters less, because you'll find this thing you've never heard of, but it has 2,500 4.5 star reviews on Amazon. You're like, well, I've never heard of it, but it does what I need to do. And so the brand really gets, the value of the brand gets diminished in that kind of place. And so the challengers are there, and coming back to the importance of the brand. Your retail, so CPG retail, we're talking the same thing, something on the shelf. And it's got to be both things. Like, you can have the most amazing brand, but if your product is nothing special or actually doesn't even function so well, people aren't going to come back, or they're going to leave bad reviews on it. And so you need both pieces. But certainly, I think that, sticking with Amazon, I think people think they can just put a product out there and not really think a whole lot about the brand and be successful, and that they own a brand, when in reality they do not.
So do you take a different strategy with your potential clients if their strategy is more based on grocery or convenience store versus like, hey, we're going to roll this thing out on Amazon? Is that a completely different kind of decision tree that you would go down, or is there some crossover?
There is it
the same process?
Well, I think at the root of it, what we want to the first thing we want to really understand is the buying experience. Like, what does that look like? A grocery is challenging to. People aren't going to buy Cheerios on Amazon.com, right? They're going to come from the grocery store. But even today, that's changing, where all the stores are kind of still shopping checking out on the phone and moving. So anyways, not getting into the weeds too much here, but it really, really matters how people shop. And to the extent of like, say, online versus in retail, I think we find our clients they all have aspirations of being in retail, even if they're going to start online. And the one thing that is very, very difficult to change later is your packaging. I mean, certainly not impossible, but if you've already got a bunch of pre-printed labels, boxes, or even inventory, that's static. And your digital assets can change on the fly. You can split test those. And so we tend to almost always optimize for the packaging, for the job that has to do. Because when you go into retail, on that shelf, you're walking down the aisle, for the most part, you have nothing but the packaging to really convey what the product is, your proposition, the brand, everything. It has to carry all of that weight. And so we really tend to focus pretty heavily on that. And then also getting at that, how competitive is it? If it's new and different, then the job of that packaging is to more differentiate a product. Maybe it's creating a product category. If it's very crowded, like we were talking about the oils, then it's a different place, and the needs of have to take into the competitiveness of the marketplace. So there's just so many different aspects that we look at that are very contingent and different based on the buying experience.
So what would you tell someone that is they've had this dream in their head for years. They want to start a new product. They make the best brownies or whatever it is, or they have the next widget that they think is going to sell 1 million. Where would you say they should start? Like, what is that first step that they should do? Because obviously you're working with established brands. That's not necessarily what you do, but maybe there's somebody out there listening that wants to get something started. What would be that first tidbit of advice you would want them to hear?
Yeah. And, actually, just to kind of preface that, we work with a lot of startup brands, brand new products. Typically, you haven't heard of them yet, so they're less likely to make it into our portfolio. We can only put a small amount in there. But to your question, I think that it's really spend some time on your strategy. And it's the things that we're talking about. Try to dig down to that why. Clients will come to us, whether they're a startup brand or even existing brand, and it's common that they'll say what makes them different. And I can change their brand name to 5 of their competitors, and no one would know that I'm not talking about that other brand. And so my point being is what you think makes you different is not always as strong as you might think. And so really get at that why. If the product is having a hard time being different, then you've got to really focus on why the brand is different and what you stand for. So these are kind of the pillars. And not only that, but that work up front, eventually someone like SmashBrand or someone else is going to design what this product is going to look like, what the packaging is going to look like. And that whole story and that research of really defining what it stands for and who you are and what makes you different is 10 times better design brief. So that the designer, no matter what their skill level, the what is so much more important than making something pretty. And so this work up front is really that what. So to put something a little bit more tangible for people to how they go about that, it's just things just come to you through immersion. So I would immerse yourself in the market. Go to the retail place where things are sold. Try and think about things from different perspective. How competitive is this? Pretend you don't know any of the brands. Why would you even pick one up or look at it? Go on Amazon for the product category. Read the Q&As. Read the reviews. What are people talking about? Maybe there's something inherent in the product category that no one really addresses and they're confused about. And yours isn't unique there, but you can be the only one that's really talking about it. So these are the kind of things where you can create, solve needs and create some differentiation before you even start working on what it looks like.
Well, Michael, you've been very gracious with your time. I have a couple quick knee-jerk questions I want to ask you to wrap things up. But before I do that, tell people how they can learn more about your business, how they can connect with you, how they can get in touch and ask questions.
Thanks for that. So probably the best way to really understand what we do. My name is Michael Keplinger. You can find me LinkedIn. But our website also, SmashBrand.com. We publish a lot of articles. We talk a lot about different aspects that we're talking about here of things that are drivers and unique situations and how we've addressed those in our blog, also in our articles. And so there's a lot of resources there. And if you want to reach out to me, Michael at SmashBrand.com.
Awesome. All right. You ready for a couple quick knee jerks?
All right. Let's see it.
What's been the biggest shift that you've seen in your business in 2020 as a result of COVID?
Is so much movement online. It's disruptive, really, honestly. And, specifically, I mentioned we have brands. We sell on Amazon, so I've seen how that has done and really alluding to how the brand in so many products and things, it's been a big shakeup. So aggressive brands that, are maybe weren't very well known can use that disruption to to really push. I think that there's value in pushing hard in marketing, even though it seems these times are uncertain, but certainly just a huge shakeup. And even like I was saying, people's reluctance to go into stores, that's going to change. They'll be back in stores. The vaccine will come, coronavirus will be gone. And some things will still be like, hey, it was actually really nice to just click on a button and get my groceries delivered on my front door. And so these are the kind of things that I think have changed quite a bit. What it means is maybe still getting defined, but certainly there's opportunity. There's always opportunity when there's a big shakeup.
So give me one bold prediction about how marketing, branding, consumer packaging is going to change. Because in my world, I'm more of a sticks and bricks retail guy. That's what I do all day, every day. And our world is changing by the minute, by the day, not by the year anymore. So give me one bold prediction about how your business is going to change and what that might look like. Something that's maybe a little different than what the mainstream is saying.
Yeah, I think the big brands are seeing this. They're getting this competition that is seemingly coming out of nowhere, biting at the bits. And it gets to a dilution of the old historic trends of mega brands. And so the mega brands are going to continue to diminish and they're going to get diluted because brand is, it's harder to make it matter more. And ultimately, I think you're going to see trends where data matters a lot. You're a buyer. I'm a Walmart buyer, big top stores. And historically, you hire people that just kind of can intuit a product that's going to be successful. But because the data is there now, they're going to rely on it more heavily. We've done a lot of work where we're actually tailoring our research and our consumer studying, since we're doing it as part of our process. But we've tailored our reporting so they can walk into a Costco or Walmart and basically say, hey, I'm going to beat the competition because, and this is why, and let me prove it to you. And so I think that a trend, this is my bold prediction, I guess, is you're going to see a lot of brands that are Amazon first, and they've proved it there. And then that's going to be the proof point that takes them right into retail. And these big brands are going to diminish because of it.
Do you think the brands will stay smart enough, nimble enough to pick those off kind of as they go? Like for instance, like Art of Shaving, right? Like those guys kind of came out of nowhere. Now they're in all these stores. And I'm sure that they have a bunch of offers. Do you see these bigger brands, paying enough attention to know like, hey, we've got to continue to grow in this space, and it's going to have to be through absorbing these kind of quick startups?
Yeah, I'm sure you have, some of your listeners are these big brands and they manage these big products, and they understand what I'm about to say, and it's probably painful, but they're just so big they can't get out of their own way. They're so set in how it used to be that they could control the audience. But the reality is, the small startup brand that is coming and biting at their market share and really kind of displacing them is a result not of them some magically doing everything right. It's that 27 other ones failed, and they're the ones that did it right, almost by trial and error. And so the bigger brands, and also why we work with these bigger brands, is they have to get more. They have to be more open to change, and all they want to do is incremental change. And so, our agency is able to help reduce risk for them, because we can take these things where otherwise they're just like, there's no way, that's too radical of a change. I've got such a huge market share, I have to protect it. They want incremental change, but incremental change is not what's winning. It's these bold differences in the millennial audience of just like, wow, this is just amazingly different. And so for the most part, they have to structurally change their acceptance of risk and be bold and make bold moves. And I think that we can get in the way there and test it, put it like kind of basically prove that it's going to work through our testing to really reduce the risk so that they can actually do it. Because without it, I fear they're going to just continue on this trend that I talked about of diminishing in relevance in these brands that they think come out of nowhere. They don't. As soon as they buy one, there's another one right behind them.
I think that's the most important thing you said in the last 30 minutes. Just having the guts to be bold, make bold moves, and realize that if you're in the retail business right now, the old guard of 2% year-over-year growth is gone. If you're not being radical and making incredibly bold moves, you're probably there's probably gonna be an obituary written about you here in the next few years. This is a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking time, sharing your knowledge base with us. I know that anybody that's in branding and in consumer packaging or in just retail branding in general could learn something from this conversation. And I just want to take a second to acknowledge you. Thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. It's been a fun and interesting conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
All right, take care.